Hey, everybody. Welcome to Far From the Tree, a podcast where you can learn, laugh, and even cry with us, your host, mother and daughter duo, Jamie Dawn and Tatiana Maisel. Jamie that's me, is an ICF certified coach and astrologer, and Tatiana is a resident therapist dedicated to be of service to others through our gifts and life experiences. So get comfy and share this sacred space with us. Who knows what fruit may fall in your lap as you tune into Far From the Tree. Welcome, Tatiana.
Welcome.
So this is we're going to call it episode 2 because we just finished a mini series with parent child. So this is our episode 2 when we're going to explore when do I need professional help. But what's the weather like for you today? And I don't mean outside, I mean inside.
The word cosmos comes to mind, and I think it's probably because I'm looking at your Alex Gray poster behind you, but it's like I want to say it was like a spring flowers kind of day. I know I said that last time, but this one I guess feels more like a cosmos swirling around, new intention, something's brewing kind of feeling, kind of weather,
Perfect.
But not daunting. Yeah.
Guess what?
Hmm.
We have a new moon eclipse on Wednesday into Thursday, and it is our first eclipse of the year, and it is in our new series of Aries Libra. And I'll give a small little taste of what that can mean for some of us, and that is we're going to be looking at the individualism that Aries brings, that independence, that passion, courage, assertiveness, maybe aggression, and the individualism versus Libra, which is all about partnership and accommodation and negotiations and contracts and being able to be in partnership with others and collaborate. And so it's the me versus us kind of energy that we're bringing in. And the nodes of the moon are what makes an eclipse when they are sitting next to the sun. And with this being a new moon, we also have the moon and the sun canoodling, as I like to say, together with the node of the moon in Aries, the north node, and then the south node is in Libra. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting time, an interesting setup, if you will, for us as we're coming out of a eclipse season where we were doing a lot of healing, and there was a lot of looking at how do we build a new future and doing it, and can we really trust ourselves? Can we trust what is being presented to us, because the nodes are still in Taurus Scorpio, but we're feeling this kind of tail end of the energy where we're finalizing, maybe still working through, well, as we talked about in our first episode, we're always healing because it's a process, but we've been going really deep into it, and now we're going to start emerging into, hey, how do I make this now my own way of doing things? So yeah, all this information healing that I've been doing, the self-awareness that's probably been brought up, the circumstances, all of that. Now, how do I express that into the world and do it in my own way? And it's interesting because we were talking about in our previous episode, can you grow? Can you find who you are within relationship? Perfect of the Aries Libra energy that we're going to be entering into. Can I develop myself and still be in relationship? And if not, then maybe the relationship it's time to go. So
does Mercury get fired yet?
Does Mercury get fired?
When does Mercury get fired? Because Mercury is just like, what, 3 or 4 times a year? Oh, retrograde. Let's fuck your life up. Mercury, like, what? Is this the job you were assigned? Or are you just doing your job badly? Like, what's the deal?
Well,
tell me.
Mercury, let me just say this. The planets don't make us do anything. We feel the influence, just like we can feel the wind blow, or we can feel the tides of the moon as it changes and all of that, but they don't make us do anything. Well, we feel them. And poor Mercury, he gets such a bad rap, but he's based off of the archetype of Mercury, who is the messenger of the gods. And so he would deliver the messages from the gods to the humans, from the gods in Olympus down to the god of Hades and the underworld. And, and he is the one who we associate with transportation as well, because we need to get from point A to point B, right? So there's information, there's transportation, there's communication, all of that is mercurial. And you think about it, Mercury rules the mind because it's processing information, right? And so then, because we are in the age of technology and machines, when Mercury goes retrograde, when any planet goes retrograde, let me just give a little setup there. Any planet goes retrograde, it is closest to the Earth because it's standing between the sun and Earth. And so we feel the effects of the retrograde as a little more personal or internal. We also say that when a planet is retrograde, it's going backwards, which technically it's not. But it would be like sitting in a car at a stoplight and feeling as though the car moving next to you, it takes off and you're still sitting there. It may feel as though you're going backwards. That's what it feels like. It appears to be that way, but it's not really going backwards. You're not moving. So anyways, Mercury retrograde, yes, happens 3 to 4 times every year. This time it is in a Earth sign of Taurus, and it is affecting a lot of physical things like our equipment or our cars. I've had some car stuff going on. But it also, when Mercury goes retrograde, it's in shadow. It actually goes retrograde the day after the eclipse, which will be on Friday, the 20th or 21st, excuse me. So we're going to feel the effects of this particular Mercury retrograde in a way that not only messes with some of our electronics and stuff, but really physical spaces, with it being in Taurus, as well as financial, as well as concrete possessions, if you will. So be interesting. But anyways, I always say too that not everything is as it appears to be when Mercury's retrograde, because it does cause miscommunication often, or we perceive things through a foggy lens. So it's always good to have a second set of eyes. It's always good to recheck and double check things before sending them, especially if you are saying something nasty about your boss or something, and you think you're sending it to a coworker and it ends up in your boss's inbox. Not really a good thing to do. So, but
I do that if it's a regular messages.
Yeah. But Mercury retrograde does create a bit of a trickster energy as well, because Mercury liked to play tricks. He was the messenger god, but he also liked to play tricks. So you never know. But the other rule of thumb too, for anybody who's new to astrology or slightly dangerous knowledge enough, Mercury retrograde also has a way of bringing things from our past back to us. So it's a great time to wrap up things from our past, but it also can bring up old lovers, old exes, old friends, things like that. People that maybe we don't want to deal with or we thought was dead and gone. Now they're back,
What a perfect learning opportunity to deal with them differently, isn't it?
It is, because we are not the same people we once were. Every day we've had a new experience and we wake up brand new. So, and we have new tools that we can use, and
that's right.
So, and really in this Mercury retrograde, think back to the last couple of weeks, what kind of conversations, because Mercury's ruling our conversations, right? What kind of conversations have we been having? We may feel as though there was a concrete conclusion to it, and with Mercury retrograde, it may pop back up in sometimes the most unusual ways. So
interesting.
My
mom is a nerd, everybody.
I do love astrology, but it is like learning another language. I mean, it's important. This is where exactly. It's I think it's a perfect segue into why we would need a professional. I mean, being an astrologer has been something, a labor of love. It's a lifelong learning, I can tell you that. And I won't claim to know everything, because no chart is the same and there's always new information. And I still say Pluto is a planet, even though we tried to reduce it to an asteroid, but still a planet to me. I know.
How are you going to do that to Pluto?
I know. Pluto's so powerful. I'm surprised that we even tried. But yes. But it's a perfect segue into why is professional help important? So why do you think it's important?
It goes along, I think, with what you just said, which is like, I don't know everything, right? No one person can hold all possible knowledge in any realm, like ever in life. And, you go to school or you choose to study on your own, whatever, a certain topic, and you become an expert in it. And when you're a professional, you probably have spent many dollars in finding mentors or in textbooks or in testing or schooling to take on this specialty, and you want to provide a service for other people.
Absolutely. I think also it's important because a professional often is a neutral party,
Mm-hmm.
or at least should be, if you're looking at it from trying to get not just expertise, but also an unbiased view.
Sure.
That objective versus subjective view, I think, also comes into play. And also, the professional is somebody that I think you can trust more because they put the work in. They put the time, the money, the energy behind it. They've been practicing for a while, that sort of thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
because trust and safety are the foundations for building any sort of relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a professional, if you also, I will say this, a professional to me means that there's a code of ethics that you also uphold. And so if you say you're a professional, I'll say astrologer or coach like I am, then I would say, or a professional intuitive, that, I've done the work, but I also hold a certain standard, a certain ethics that I hold myself to, but I'm also held to by the International Coaching Federation. And in doing so, part of that ethics is I have to do my own work before I can even work with somebody else. And so I've done a
Mm-hmm.
lot of my own foundational work.
Yeah, as part of that lifelong learning, it starts with us. What do we know about ourselves? What do we have yet to learn? What's being revealed? How can we, make these interpretations and make these adjustments and incorporate what we've learned into our life? And then how do we give that back to other people?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What do you think ourselves, the audience, what we should look for in a professional?
Depends on your needs, depends on your ailments. I guess, so speaking from the mental health perspective, if you are someone, I guess let's talk trauma or grief, right? Either one is they stand out pretty well. If you know that those are things that you're facing, you would want to look for someone who is well versed in both or either of those subjects. I would say both would be better because, as David Kessler has said, not all grief has trauma, but all trauma has grief. And if you're like, oh, I'm just going to find like some regular person to deal with trauma, it's like, well, what if they specialize with anxiety disorders? What if they specialize in neurodevelopmental disorders like autism or ADHD? That they might not be the best person for you, right? So you want to look for those certifications, the qualifications. You want to make sure that they are licensed to practice in their state or their country, and that you mesh well. At the end of the day, like if after the first session, it's like, I don't know, the vibe was off. Like, okay, we'll keep looking around. It's important that you feel comfortable with the professional that you choose, and I would say doctors included. I can't speak for doctors, but I've heard plenty of stories where people have seen doctors for various ailments and they felt like their complaints weren't addressed or their needs weren't heard or they were dismissed or violated, anything like that. It's like, well, don't stick with the first person that's in front of you because maybe you're desperate or you need an answer. Like they might not be the one to give you those things.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I know for me, I think I always look for, yes, the licenses, the titles for, especially if we're dealing with doctors or therapists, that sort of thing. the interesting thing is in the coaching world, in the astrology world that I've been in, there is not any sort of licensure, if you will.
Mhm.
There's certifications, and I feel that that's very important for me. Anyways, I trust somebody who says I've been through International Coaching Federation or another accredited coaching foundation. I trust that much more than anybody can call themselves a coach these days. And that
Right.
pisses me off because
Mhm.
it's like, okay, just because you talk well doesn't mean you know what you're talking about. And it
Right.
doesn't, and sometimes you can do a lot of harm if you don't have the competencies and like I say, the code of ethics and contracts and all the things that are involved with
Mhm.
that sort of thing, you know? I mean, that'd be like me saying I'm a therapist because I gave somebody psychological advice, you know?
Yeah. You can go on any social media platform these days and it's like, oh yeah, I'm a life coach, I'm a wellness coach. I'm like, okay, well, as someone who has like learned to decipher what's reliable and valid, I also look for people's credentials and the relevancy, like how close, like how many years ago was this study done, right? Same for qualification of a person. Like, do you have any kind of certification or credentials behind your name? Like, are you a licensed massage therapist? Are you a certified massage therapist? There's differences. A certification you can get what in 2 months, maybe, but to be licensed is hours based on the state, and then you're certified with the board, right? So yeah, I'm with you on that, especially for coaching. It's troublesome.
Yeah. Well, because my thing too, like with coaching and astrology, is that people come to me because they trust me. And if
Mhm.
I am giving information out of my ass, and I'm making shit up, I'm going to harm
Right.
them
Mhm.
and I'm going to harm the profession. Right.
Mhm.
And I think that's the piece that really gets me is people just don't think about it. I mean, I really, I'm a snob, I guess. I'll admit it. I'm a snob when it comes to the profession itself. And, it's funny because you mentioned the wellness coach. How many people, I mean, you can do a lot of harm. Somebody
Mhm.
it's like, oh, I work out all the time. I go to the gym. Oh, I'm a wellness coach.
Right.
Right. And now you're training people and you don't know what muscle groups should work together and how to properly align somebody when they're lifting or whatever. I mean, you can do a lot of harm. It's no different than the mind
Right.
and how much you can harm somebody's mind by sharing the wrong thing. I say this all the time. Our words can harm or heal, you know?
Right. Or giving like nutrition advice when you have no place in doing that, especially if there's like contraindications with medications or
That's right.
allergies. Like, mm-mm.
Yeah.
Unless you have a certification or a qualification of some sort, please refrain. You can say like this has worked for me. You're welcome to try it. Yeah, absolutely. It's a suggestion, but to say concretely like, oh, this is what you have to do is very misleading.
Oh, yeah. What about the professions that the professionals, if you will, that people get into a professional client relationship and there's enablement versus empowerment, and it can create a codependent relationship. So I think that's one thing that we have to watch out for as well in these kinds of relationships, because we build so much trust and safety, and very often the client can get codependent on,
Mhm.
well, if Jamie said this, it must be true, you know? So,
Yeah, that's usually why we're told in school not to give advice as therapists, because if the client runs with it and it works, then they become dependent on you. But if they run with it and it doesn't work, then you get blamed. So just like don't do it. Make suggestions, make some encouragements, challenge, confront, right? Call out those discrepancies. It's like, oh, well, you say this, but you're doing this. And I'm a little confused.
yeah, I had someone once say to me, well, you didn't say this, so this is what happened. And I'm like, I'm not God. I am not playing that role. I'm not responsible for your day going well or not. I'm telling you.
Jamie said I would have a good day today. And she was wrong because I didn't. Someone cut me off and I was just very upset.
Right. I'm responsible for your reactions or for somebody else's behavior. Not so much.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. I still think of that guy that called about which club he should go in to find a hookup, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, there was that. Oh, let me tell you, there have been some interesting things that have shown up in my life. I can tell you that. But I can't tell the stories because, again, code of ethics, there's confidentiality. That but yeah, there are some wild stories out there.
Oh, I don't know this person. You gave me nothing else other than that, which is just like,
Mhm. Oh yeah, I've been asked about sex toys and things like that too.
which one will bring me the most pleasure? The one that works for you. That's the one. How do I know? I guess you're gonna have to try it, aren't you?
This is where the empowerment comes in. Well, if you have some choices and life's a grand experiment, which ingredients would you pick?
See, it's funny that you say that people trust you, which is great, right? And I think that some of my clients, right, they trust me, some of them don't. That's totally fine. But as I'm learning, right, especially depending on the circumstances that, the client's been through, what's more important is that they have self-trust.
Yeah.
And so going with that, like, oh, which sex toy? Okay, well, you trust me to call me. At the same time, I'm going to trust you that you know what's best for you. But I don't know. Well, this is where that self-trust comes in. Go try a different couple, go try some toys, go try a sex class, go do what makes you feel good.
Absolutely.
Report back later. Have a good time.
But you know what? And I'm digressing from our topic for a second, but you're bringing up something important too, that we as a society, especially here in the US, as parents, I've witnessed so many times not to trust yourself. Parents
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, that we didn't really talk about it on our parent-child series, but it comes back to that self-trust. And we're constantly as kids told, I know what's best for you. You need to do this because I've been where you are and this is going to turn out badly and you don't know what's right for you. I know better. I'm older, all those kinds of things. I can't recall maybe once or twice that I ever used that phrase with you and your brother, but you know,
I don't remember either of you saying I know what's best for you. I remember being told I want what's best for you, which is fine and well, except that I think the underlying hidden message there was I also know what is best because I'm the parent.
right.
And it's like, well, maybe I know what's best for me. And maybe I don't. And maybe I need to figure it out. Or maybe I do know what's best. And maybe I'm really happy and I'm living my best life. And you should trust that I'm being honest with you right now and take that. If you want what's best for me, which is to be happy and healthy and self sufficient, why don't you look at all the equations or elements in the equation and just see that it has added up to that? Just because it doesn't look like what you maybe envisioned doesn't mean I'm not doing what's best for me.
Absolutely. And I'll segue this back to astrology because the nodes, I mentioned the nodes of the moon being in North Node Taurus, South Node Scorpio right now. And there's one more aspect in May, another eclipse, where then the nodes officially shift into Aries Libra. But with what we've been working with, I talk about the deep healing and building trust and all of that. It really has been, can I trust my own judgment? Can I trust myself? Can I go into some of these situations, similar themes or different situations and say, this is what's best for me? Because when the nodes shift into Aries Libra, we're going to be now going, I trust myself enough to make my own decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this partnership that I need to make sure supports me. And if it doesn't support me, then we got to work through it. And I can trust, did I make the right choice in that partnership? Right. So it's those kinds of things.
And even if I didn't, do I trust myself enough to turn around or make a different choice?
Absolutely. Yeah. What are the benefits of having professional help?
Having someone help you work through topics like that. Having someone who can provide like supportive reflection, like, oh, well, I can't give you the answers, but this is what I'm hearing from you. Is that accurate? Yeah, maybe, or no, I don't think so. It's more like this. Okay, cool. You're gaining perspective. You're gaining not necessarily outside influence, but it's a way of seeing things differently. Support in general, right? To know that you're no longer alone. I offer to my clients every time I see them, if you need anything between now and next session, feel free to reach out. You have my contact information. And do they? No, they never do. Only to reschedule if they need that or cancel, and that's totally fine. But so I listened to, I think it was The Gift of Therapy by Irvin Yalom, and he had said that was something he had done with one of his clients. You can call me if you need it. And she never did. And comes back and just says, it was really just you offering and me knowing that it's there that made me feel better.
Yeah.
And so I offer it every time, because it's like, even if you never use it, it is there for you. If you need an extra session because you're going through crisis and you're not sure what's happening, like, call me for 30 minutes. Let's process something.
Yeah. I mean, we especially experienced this during COVID, right? The pandemic is the isolation, feeling like we were alone. And as we know, it stirred up a lot of mental health, which is now, thank goodness, not such a stigma. But yeah, having a professional, knowing that there's somebody safe that is neutral, that can give you perspective and support, lets you know you're not alone. Great benefit. I like using the phrase lean in and lift each other up. This is a way of doing that, Also, it can help us build better relationships because we're gaining tools, hopefully, and things like that we can use to communicate. And even if your professional person is your only relationship, at least it's a relationship and you're able to work with them. It also reduces the risk of other health issues, believe it or not. Some people don't make that equation, but the more stress we have in our lives and the other things that we have going on, if we just keep it bottled up, what's it going to do? It's going to consternate in the body, create dis-ease.
Correct.
And does contribute to other health issues as well.
And leads to negative coping skills and patterns, can damage relationships.
Yeah.
I want to pause for just a second and go back to building better relationships, because I know you and I have talked about it before, where we say to our clients, like, if this isn't working for you, let us know so we can find you someone to continue to get better care, or the care that you need. At the same time, what we do in here is hopefully a model for you to take out into the world, that this can be the ideal relationship that you have with someone, coming with honesty, coming with integrity, coming with questions and doubt and conflict and concern, and being able to work through those things in a very healthy and helpful way. And it's like, oh, well, if I can do that with this person, maybe I can do that out there.
Amen, sister. Yep. Another little segue here. It's so difficult for us as human beings to offer those kinds of strategies and coping skills with our personal relationships, because I believe we have our own personal agenda, fear of rejection, we don't feel safe, we don't know what the outcome is going to be, what if the person's going to react badly, right? Because there's that attachment to a particular outcome, or there's expectations that are set up with, if I say this and you should react that way, or you should say this to me. And you've heard me say this, but I think I shared it on a previous episode, but the last conversation I had with my partner, I was like, wow, I actually was grounded and centered and calm and perfectly okay, even though I didn't like what I heard. And it was just like, I that feeling of I did it. I actually did it. It was so great. And it was because I've been working with professionals and talking and doing my work and gathering resources and that sort of thing. So yeah.
If you didn't do it already, do it on camera for everybody. Pat yourself on the back for that. I love patting myself on the back.
Yeah. I'm proud as hell.
Should be. Absolutely.
Yep. So, and I'm shouting it out on the rooftop. Another thing that a professional can do for us too is if there's any performance issues, and I'm not talking about in the bedroom, even though there is that, um, not just that, but any sort of performance issues can improve because you're talking with somebody who is an expert in that field, or at least has the experience and knowledge to be able to share with you.
Right.
So if
Right.
you're, I have a lot of clients that I work with to help them become better leaders.
Right. Better speech givers, better friends. Yeah.
Yeah. Just overall more self-awareness too. More self-aware we are, the better we can perform. And then also it improves our quality of life, right? Having a professional.
Absolutely.
So, overall. So when should we seek professional help?
Depends. Depends on the ailment, depends on the need, again, the circumstances, right? But, again, talking mental health, when you feel like it, when you think you might need it, when you think even if you don't need it, you just want to have someone to talk to. When someone else observes things in you that they know they can't help with. Yeah, I remember Talbot looking at me. I was talking about something one day, probably family stuff. And he was just like, dude, look, like, I don't know what to tell you. I can't help you. And it might be a good thing that you find someone that can. And I was just like, oh, yeah, probably. And man, I've been seeing her for 3 years and I love her. Love her. Shout out to Dee Dee. My therapist is awesome. But yeah, they, when you're having difficulties with your physical body, right? I'm having sleepless nights. I'm having indigestion. I'm having shaking and trembling and sweating and problems concentrating. And most of the time you end up at a medical doctor for that. And they're like, okay, well, you can try this medication. If you're not interested in that, you can try this mental health professional, or you can have both. And that's totally fine too. And usually doctors, again, have referral systems and they'll provide you with that. If you want to work on, if you know that you have anxiety, you know that you have depression, you want to work on those things, seek a professional. If you have issues with behavior problems, most parents seek that for their children. What I will say, and I think we probably have definitely covered it, is that when you seek help for your children because they are having behavior problems, you as well need to be in therapy because most of the time it's stemming from parenting. A child is responding to their environment, and you are their environment. You are their teacher. You are their guide. And I have seen kids get better because their parents are involved, because their parents start talking to them, because their parents are getting their own help to work on their own blind spots that were impeding parenting. Because guess what? You're still a person before you're a parent, and you still have needs that need to be worked on. And if you don't work on those, you're going to transmute them to your kid. A kid's behavioral stuff is usually a parent thing or an environment thing. Anyway, I'm digressing. But there's lots of reasons to seek professional help. What about for you on the life coaching stance?
I would say for me, anytime you want to move forward with your goals, you're ready to take where you are right now and say, I need someone to motivate, to inspire, to help, to somewhat accountability. Really, with coaching, we want to empower so that we're holding ourselves accountable, but at least getting started, knowing that, hey, I've got a session with Jamie. I need to make sure I've done what I committed to doing in the last session so that we can move towards our goals. So a lot of times that's where people are wanting to have me as their coach. And then, of course, with the astrology piece, it's a greater self-awareness. It's an opportunity to be able to see what are some things coming up ahead that I need to be paying attention to so that when they show up, I can respond versus react. And when we respond, then versus reaction is an emotional based behavior that often is very unconscious, and we're not grounded, we're not centered, and we tend to give our power away. And so at least responding, we're able to stay in our center. We're able to feel everything and not let our feelings control us. And so it also helps in doing that, knowing that that's coming up and having these tools and awareness allows us also to reduce stress, believe it or not, which again is another way of another reason to have a professional.
Absolutely.
And take good care of ourselves. The other thing too, I will say with professionals is if you've experienced a traumatic event, all of us, I think all of us have experienced trauma in some way, shape, or form, whether it's emotional trauma, physical trauma, whatever, right? Don't you agree?
Yes. And I will say, trauma is not what happens to you, it's how your body interprets it. It is not the event. It does not require big events to make trauma. It can be very small events accumulated over time that have a big effect. So if you think about chaotic environments, if you think about aggressive or punitive environments, places that you were ignored, it's the little stuff usually that amounts to all of that big stuff, right? And we take it, we internalize it. But yes, all of us do have some form of trauma in our life. It could be spiritual wounding, it could be rejection from relationships, it could be traumatic brain injury, it could be bullying, it could be dealing with chronic pain, it could be medical procedures.
Could be a car accident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it could be witnessing any of those things. It could be learning that happened to a very close friend or family member.
Yeah. I will tell you that for me, this sounds trivial for some, but again, you're just to bring your point home. For me, it was traumatic. It was when I took a pretty big tumble skiing last season. It's my first season skiing, and it was towards the end of the season, and I knew I was going to ski again this season, and I was still mentally blocked about it. I was, to get on the mountain again, and even to go down the same run, and all of that. And this was on the baby run. And I wanted to get to the intermediate level, sort of my goal for this year. And so I went to a EMDR therapist and I did several sessions with them and specifically went for that, but it ended up having other traumas that I also worked with I knew I was going back to visit family for Christmas and I know how my dynamics with my parents can be, particularly my father. So I did some trauma release around that too.
Yeah. I'll say that when I broke my collarbone, when I was 16, it took me a good year to recover. Like physically, I was ready to go. It's just like, I just want to move my body. I want to exercise. I want to feel good. But playing soccer competitively again, I was scared because I was like, if I bump into someone, I'm going to hurt myself. I'm going to get hurt again. I'm going to break something. I'm going to be out. All these things running through your mind. And it took a lot of suffering with that coach. God,
yeah,
terrible.
Anyways.
C word.
Not coach.
Nope. The other one, the good one. But yeah, those things can impact us big time.
Well, and I remember taking you to Colleen, who did the brain spotting, and because I could tell psychologically on the field you were not as aggressive because that was the one thing I always loved watching you play is you were fearless. I mean, you played on an all boys team for 2 seasons for sake because you didn't want to deal with the girls.
Yeah,
but those boys didn't know what to do with you because you were just as tough as they were. So to see you on the field intimidated, I knew there was definitely something psychological. It wasn't physical.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely have a professional if there's any sort of trauma, no matter what kind of trauma it is, like you're saying. So
wait,
yes.
pause. Also, we made a couple of notes. If you're using substances to a great degree, I know everyone's seen Intervention and it's like, oh, like that's really radical. It's like, okay, it is, except that it is people coming together for a common cause, which is the care of this person, the concern of this person. And substances can be very tricky. Understand that it is a coping skill that has kept someone safe for a very long time. They didn't know where to turn to. It also could have been something that just kind of happened. They were prescribed something at one point and it just took and they never got off of it. There's lots of reasons why, abusing substances happen. At the same time, if you're concerned about yourself or somebody else that is using, use as much care as possible with them in addressing it. And I'm not saying like enable them or allow them to continue down the bad path that they're on. Just understand that it is a correct behavior for them to find some kind of coping skill, and this one happened to be that outlet. And if you can get them on board with change and with seeking help, there are resources for that, like AA or NA or Smart Recovery or Cocaine Anonymous. There's quite a few, plenty of non-denominational ones as well.
Absolutely. That's the nice thing. There are a lot of resources out there. And
Mhm.
one resource I definitely want to mention on a regular basis is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. I think
Mhm.
that's important to
Mhm.
note, because our mental health is crucial for our well-being, and substance abuse can contribute to suicidal thoughts too, and things like that,
Mhm.
because you're just in an altered state. Oof. Yeah.
Also, 988 is the mental health emergency line. 911 is for other emergencies. Of course, if 988 doesn't go through, call 911, but frame it as a mental health emergency. Request that a mental health professional be there that is a wellness check over anything else, because we have seen plenty of videos where police are not trained in this. It is not their job. And that's why we have 988 implemented. So just be wary when you dial 911 with a mental health call. Know that 988 is there, or the suicide prevention hotline is there as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just to wrap it up, how do we help someone who needs help? What's one of the best things we can do?
Be there for them. Support them. Most people have in their life not felt seen, heard, understood, validated. And if we can offer those very simple 4 things to them, that can be absolutely life-changing. If they are willing to talk to a professional, maybe make that appointment for them. Make that phone call. Give them those numbers. Anything that helps take the pressure off, that they just have to show up. And that's the biggest thing that they have to do. Yeah, be there and listen to them. Be a friend above anything else. Even if you're a parent, be a friend in that moment.
What about if they don't want help?
Oh, that's tough, because you can't really help somebody that doesn't want help.
Right. Help
And
is help when it's not asked for.
right. And at that point, it's going to be you sitting there and going through the motions as long as you can tolerate. And hopefully throughout that time, you're voicing your concerns and your boundaries, and you're maintaining boundaries with that person and with yourself. And if at any point it gets to be too much for you and they still don't want help and it's wearing you down, it might be a good time to exit the relationship. But only you are going to know when that time is possible.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I would say that, in one of the things I keep in the back of my mind is none of us are broken. None of us need fixing, but we are human, and we're imperfect humans. Therefore, we need help in the healing process. So keeping that in the back of my mind, nothing's broken, nothing needs fixing, is a way of staying present and holding the space open for the individual that needs that help.
Absolutely.
So it is another wonderful, beautiful moment to say I love you and thank you for sharing this time. And join us in our next episode, where who knows what's going to fall far from this tree. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Psychology Today. You can find me at Pathways Family and Community Services in Virginia. Yep, that's me.
Social media at all? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, yes. Instagram, no. That's kind of like my personal diary, so that's on private. Facebook's private, just personal and family reasons.
Yep. Excellent. And you can find me at jamiedawn.com, and I'm all over social media because that's just part of the profession. I don't post a lot of personal things in there anyways. All right, you guys. Thanks so much for watching, listening. Have a good week.
Bye, y'all. Individuals will show up and it's like, I don't know how to say this. Okay, so let me give you some examples of how I might say something. Obviously, it's what I think is like the ideal way of saying it. Does it ever happen? Probably not, because in real life that it doesn't always happen like that, but we can prepare ourselves, right? But you walk them through